Beef Wellington is often considered one of the most refined dishes in Western cuisine. Preparing it requires time, precision, and care. A tender cut of beef at the center, wrapped in a finely chopped mushroom mixture, all sealed inside a golden layer of pastry. Because of the effort involved, many people see it as a meal made for special occasions. When someone takes the time to cook Beef Wellington for family or guests, it is usually seen as a gesture of warmth and appreciation. But in this case, that elegant dish would take on a far darker meaning. The same beef fillet, the same mushroom filling, and the same pastry crust, yet the meal that was meant to bring people together would instead become the instrument of a deadly plan. Under the appearance of a carefully prepared family lunch, something far more sinister was unfolding. What should have been a comforting gathering ended with several people fighting for their lives. The case quickly became one of the most shocking poisoning incidents in Australia in recent years. From the beginning, the story was filled with confusing details, unanswered questions, and conflicting explanations. Even after investigators began examining the evidence, many aspects of the case remained unclear, forcing legal proceedings to stretch on as new information continued to surface. So the question remains, who would be capable of poisoning members of their own family? And how could such a plan be carried out without anyone realizing what was happening until it was too late? As always, before we move further into the story, if you enjoy real true crime cases like this one, remember to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss future investigations. Now, let's begin. Leongatha is a small rural town located in the Gippsland region of Victoria in southeastern Australia. It sits about 135 kilometers southeast of Melbourne and serves as a quiet regional center for the surrounding farming communities. With a population of just under 6,000 residents, Leongatha is known for its dairy farms and livestock industry. The town also acts as a local hub for commerce, education, and services for nearby rural areas. Visitors often come to explore the countryside, ride along scenic trails like the Great Southern Rail Trail, and experience the peaceful atmosphere of regional Victoria. Community events and seasonal festivals are a regular part of life here, giving the town a reputation for being friendly, calm, and close-knit. But toward the end of July 2023, that peaceful reputation would suddenly be shattered by a deeply disturbing incident. The story begins on the evening of the 30th of July, 2023. That night, the local medical facility, Leongatha Hospital, admitted 4 patients who were all suffering from nearly identical symptoms. Each of them was experiencing severe vomiting, intense stomach pain, and signs that their internal organs were rapidly failing. Within hours, doctors noticed alarming indicators of acute liver damage. At first, hospital staff suspected a serious case of food poisoning. Situations like this can sometimes occur when contaminated food spreads bacteria or toxins among several people at once. However, as doctors began gathering more information about the patients, the situation started to look far more troubling. All 4 individuals were connected. They had just attended the same meal earlier that day. What initially appeared to be a medical emergency quickly began to look like something much more suspicious. When the hospital reported the unusual cluster of symptoms, authorities were notified. Within days, the situation escalated dramatically. 3 of the 4 patients died, with multiple deaths occurring in such a short period of time. Victoria Police formally launched a criminal investigation in early August 2023. Detectives were sent to examine the house where the meal had taken place. From the outside, it looked like a typical rural home, nothing out of the ordinary. Inside, the dining area appeared neat, as though the remains of a normal family gathering had already been cleaned up. There were no signs of a struggle or any obvious disturbance. But investigators soon noticed something unusual in the kitchen. Several common cooking items appeared to be missing. According to early statements, the meal served that day included a beef dish prepared with mushrooms. Yet police could not find any leftover mushroom ingredients, food scraps, or discarded packaging in the household trash. For investigators, the absence of those materials raised serious questions. The kitchen seemed unusually clean, almost as if someone had gone to great lengths to remove anything connected to the meal. Detectives carefully documented every detail they could find, from cookware and plates to spice containers and cleaning products. Anything that might help determine what had been served that day was collected for further analysis. At that stage, authorities already suspected poisoning. However, unlike many criminal cases, there were no obvious weapons or containers holding toxic substances left behind at the scene. Strangely, it was the lack of physical evidence that began to stand out as one of the most important clues. Leading the investigation was Detective Inspector Dean Thomas from Victoria Police. Despite growing public attention and the initial lack of clear answers, the investigative team continued searching for any information that might explain what had happened. Soon they returned to the hospital to speak with medical staff. That conversation produced the first significant lead. Doctors explained that the woman who had hosted the meal had also reported stomach pain similar to the other guests. However, unlike the others, she refused to remain in the hospital for treatment and chose to leave shortly after being examined. When detectives later searched the home, they found medication used for stomach pain and diarrhea, suggesting she may have attempted to treat her symptoms on her own. For investigators, this raised an obvious question. If the meal had been contaminated accidentally, why did the person who prepared it appear to suffer far milder symptoms than the guests who had eaten it? And why refuse hospital care if the illness was severe enough to hospitalize everyone else? These details made detectives increasingly suspicious. Something about the situation inside that household did not add up. As a result, Victoria Police began focusing on the relationships between the people involved. According to hospital records, the 4 victims included Don Patterson, aged 70, and his wife Gail Patterson, also 70. Another victim was Heather Wilkinson, 60, the sister of Gail Patterson. Her husband, Ian Wilkinson, 69, was also present at the lunch. Ian Wilkinson, a pastor at a local Baptist church, would ultimately become the only survivor. The woman who hosted the meal was Erin Patterson, 49 years old. All of them were well-known members of the community in the nearby town of courtroom. Don and Gail Patterson were the parents of Erin Patterson's estranged husband. Although Erin and their son Simon Patterson had separated in 2020, the older couple reportedly remained on good terms with their former daughter-in-law. Heather Wilkinson, Gail's sister, and her husband Ian were also respected members of the community. Ian served as a pastor at the Courtroom Baptist Church and was widely known for his work with local families. The 3 victims who died, Don Patterson, Gail Patterson, and Heather Wilkinson, were remembered as kind and generous individuals who had spent years helping others. Before retiring, Don Patterson had worked as a teacher and frequently volunteered in community programs. His wife Gail and her sister Heather were involved in various local initiatives, including programs that supported disadvantaged students and immigrant families in the region. Guided by their strong Christian faith, all 3 were known for their humility, compassion, and willingness to help anyone in need. Their sudden deaths shocked not only their families, but the entire community. For the residents of this quiet, rural region, the loss left a void that could not easily be filled. Reverend Ian Wilkinson, in particular, lost his beloved wife. Through tears, relatives shared that he felt as though only half of his life remained without her. As for Erin Patterson, she was a single mother of 2 young children and the former daughter-in-law of the Patterson family. People around her often described Erin as a devoted mother who cared deeply for her children and as someone who was well educated. She grew up in the suburbs of Melbourne and attended university, initially studying science before later moving into accounting. At one point, she even took a course related to air traffic control. Erin married Simon in 2007, and the couple moved to Western Australia for a period of time, where they opened a small bookstore before eventually returning to Victoria. They had 2 children together, a son and a daughter. The couple lived together until 2015, when they officially separated after years of accumulating disagreements. Despite the separation, the two continued to share custody of their children and maintained a relatively amicable relationship until around 2022. Around that time, a dispute began to emerge between Erin and her former husband regarding financial matters. A mistake in Simon's tax filing reportedly caused Erin to lose a child support-related benefit, which led to a more serious conflict between them. From that point on, according to relatives, Erin gradually distanced herself from her former in-laws. She rarely attended family gatherings anymore, and if she did appear, it was usually only briefly. So, did this conflict have anything to do with the tragedy that later struck the family? While it is still impossible to say with certainty, based on the initial information gathered, investigators began to lean toward the possibility that this was a deliberate poisoning and that the person responsible might have been Erin Patterson. Medical examination results showed that the 4 victims had suffered severe liver damage caused by the toxin amatoxin. The toxin involved was amatoxin, a substance commonly found in the deadly mushroom Amanita phalloides, often known as the death cap. All 3 victims who died suffered acute liver failure within 5 to 6 days after the meal. The one survivor remained in critical condition for nearly 2 weeks before gradually recovering. This alone demonstrated just how lethal the mushroom could be. According to experts, amatoxin is extremely dangerous and does not break down under high cooking temperatures. This means that normal cooking cannot neutralize the poison, suggesting that whoever used the mushroom may have been aware of its toxicity, yet chose to use it anyway. The next major question investigators faced was simple. Where did the deadly mushrooms come from? The surviving victim later recalled that the main dish served at the lunch was Beef Wellington, a dish in which beef is wrapped in a mushroom mixture and pastry before being baked. This meant that mushrooms had been prepared and mixed directly inside the meal. No one present had seen any unusual mushrooms being picked nearby, which raised the possibility that the poisonous mushrooms had already been mixed into the ingredients before the cooking even began. Another detail that quickly drew attention was Erin Patterson's behavior at the hospital. According to medical staff, her actions were highly unusual. Despite complaining of stomach pain, she repeatedly refused to be admitted for treatment. The situation appeared so strange that doctors eventually contacted police because they were concerned about her condition and her behavior. Erin also hesitated when medical staff suggested that her 2 young children should be examined as well, since they had eaten some of the leftover food. This reluctance from the person who had prepared the meal raised further suspicions that she might have understood the danger of the dish more clearly than the others. Of course, investigators could not rely on speculation alone. Their work had to be based on evidence. A team of forensic and medical experts began examining the case in detail. Samples of the remaining food, vomit, and tissue from the victims were sent to laboratories for testing. The results confirmed that all of them contained traces of Amanita phalloides. Investigators also searched the house in Leongatha several times. During one major search operation, officers wearing protective gear carefully examined the property and seized numerous potential pieces of evidence, ranging from cooking pots and knives to electronic devices. They were particularly interested in any equipment related to mushroom preparation, especially a food dehydrator, a device often used to dry mushrooms. Although no dehydrator was found in the house, investigators did discover a user manual for a food dehydrator in the kitchen, suggesting that the device had once been owned by someone in the household. At the same time, police seized Erin Patterson's mobile phone to examine her communications and internet searches. However, Erin's reaction during this process drew even greater attention. Investigators began to suspect that she might be hiding something. Instead of handing over her real phone, she provided police with another device. When officers asked for her phone, Erin gave them a Samsung device that had been factory reset multiple times. This device later became known among investigators as Phone B. Meanwhile, her primary phone, referred to as Phone A, which she had used before, during, and after the time of the incident, mysteriously disappeared and has never been recovered. Despite this, police technicians continued their work. By analyzing telecommunications tower data, they discovered that Erin's phone A had previously appeared in areas known for wild mushroom growth, including forests around Loch and Outram, in May 2023. Interestingly, this was also around the time when Facebook data suggested that Erin had purchased a food dehydrator and posted photos of dried mushrooms she had prepared at home. In addition, several social media messages revealed that Erin had previously complained about being treated unfairly by members of her former husband's family. Taken together, the digital evidence began to form a picture. Months before the incident, Erin Patterson may have acquired a dehydrator, intentionally searched for wild mushrooms in areas known to contain deathcap mushrooms, and preserved them in dried form. As investigators continued working to uncover the truth, witness testimony played an important role but also presented challenges. At first, Erin Patterson appeared cooperative. She cried during interviews with reporters and expressed deep sadness over the deaths in the family, firmly denying any wrongdoing. She told police that she had also eaten the beef and mushroom dish that day and had become ill herself, but said that she had fortunately recovered very quickly. However, doctors confirmed that Erin did not remain at the hospital for observation, and her symptoms were significantly milder than those experienced by the victims. One medical staff member also noted that Erin gave an unusual description of the meal. She claimed that the mushrooms had been purchased from a supermarket several months earlier, suggesting that the dried mushrooms might have somehow become naturally contaminated. But this explanation conflicted with common knowledge. Commercially sold dried mushrooms are extremely unlikely to contain deadly toxins, while fresh, wild deathcap mushrooms are never sold in markets because of their high toxicity. The inconsistency only deepened suspicion toward her. Investigators did not stop there. Police continued to follow every possible lead surrounding Erin using specialized investigative techniques. They reviewed security cameras along the roads near her home and discovered suspicious CCTV footage recorded on the 2nd of August, 2023. In the footage, Erin was seen driving a red SUV to a waste disposal site in Coonawarra and throwing a food dehydrator into a bin designated for electronic waste. The dehydrator was later recovered and examined carefully. Laboratory testing revealed that the surface of the device not only contained fingerprints matching Erin Patterson, but also traces of amanitin, the toxin found in deathcap mushrooms. This evidence was described by investigators as almost a chemical fingerprint pointing directly to the poisoning. Meanwhile, as police ruled out other potential suspects, investigators in Victoria uncovered another startling detail involving Erin's former husband, Simon Patterson. Simon later revealed that between 2021 and 2022, he had been hospitalized 3 separate times due to mysterious gastrointestinal symptoms. On one occasion, his condition became serious enough that he required emergency treatment. At the time, doctors could not determine the cause. However, experts later concluded that Simon's symptoms were consistent with poisoning by barium carbonate, a chemical commonly found in certain types of rat poison. This discovery suggested that Erin Patterson might have attempted to poison her husband multiple times in the past by secretly placing toxic substances in his food. Although many details were becoming clearer, one major question still remained. What was Erin's motive? To understand this, police and criminal psychologists began reviewing Erin's personal history. They discovered that she had been relatively well off financially due to inheritance and had even lent money interest-free to members of her former husband's family so they could purchase homes. However, according to investigators, later events left Erin feeling deeply hurt. One issue involved Simon's tax filing mistake, which contributed to the dispute over child support payments. After that conflict, her relationship with the Patterson family appeared to grow increasingly distant. She was reportedly absent from many family gatherings. At one point, She was said to have been invited only at the last moment to her mother-in-law's 70th birthday celebration. In addition, Erin was believed to struggle with severe insecurity and had a history of eating disorders from a young age, which may have affected her psychological development. Investigators also noted a pattern of frequent dishonesty in her statements. Despite these factors, psychiatric experts concluded that Erin was mentally competent at the time of the crime and fully aware of her actions. By late October 2023, police believed they had gathered enough physical evidence and witness testimony to confidently state that Erin Patterson was the only person with the motive, opportunity, and means to carry out the poisoning. The case file was submitted to prosecutors in the state of Victoria, and an arrest warrant was carefully prepared. Early in the morning, on the 2nd of November 2023, police moved in and arrested Erin Patterson at her home in Leongatha. She was taken into custody as media crews gathered outside the property. That same day, Erin Patterson was formally charged with 3 counts of murder and 5 counts of attempted murder. As soon as the charges were announced, the deadly mushroom lunch case immediately became one of the most widely discussed criminal cases in Australia and around the world. Public reaction was intense. Many people struggled to comprehend how an ordinary woman, a mother, and former daughter-in-law could be suspected of orchestrating such a shocking family poisoning. The case was later brought before the Supreme Court of Victoria. The trial began on the 29th of April, 2025, in Morwell. It was heard before a jury of 12 members, with Justice Christopher Beale presiding over the proceedings. Erin Patterson appeared in court facing 4 primary charges related to the Patterson family. Earlier accusations concerning the alleged poisoning of Simon had been dropped so that the trial could focus on the main incident. She pleaded not guilty to all charges and continued to maintain her innocence. The courtroom battle that followed was intense. The trial lasted for more than 10 weeks, stretching from late April to early July 2025. The prosecution, led by Crown Prosecutor Nanette Rogers, presented what they described as a clear picture of a carefully planned crime carried out by Erin Patterson. Key pieces of evidence were presented to the jury, including CCTV footage showing Erin disposing of the food dehydrator at the waste facility, screenshots of old Facebook posts where she displayed dried mushrooms she had prepared at home, purchase records for the dehydrator itself, and telecommunications data showing trips she made to mushroom-growing areas in April 2023. Forensic experts presented laboratory findings showing that the recovered food dehydrator contained Erin Patterson's fingerprints as well as residue of the amanitin toxin. Prosecutors emphasized that this was not the only evidence. They highlighted a series of concealment actions Erin allegedly carried out after the incident, pretending to cooperate with doctors while refusing proper hospitalization, attempting to dispose of the dehydrator, deleting phone data, and repeatedly changing her statements to mislead investigators. Although Erin's exact motive was never fully established, prosecutors argued that the absence of a clear motive did not mean she was innocent. In response, the defense team, led by lawyer Colin Mandy, focused on creating reasonable doubt about the prosecution's narrative. They acknowledged that Erin had lied about certain details but argued those lies were the result of panic or embarrassment rather than proof of a deliberate murder plot. The defense maintained that Erin never intended to harm anyone that day and that the deaths were the result of a tragic accident. They proposed that Erin may have unknowingly collected poisonous mushrooms and accidentally mixed them into the meal without realizing the danger. Regarding motive, the defense stressed that prosecutors had not demonstrated any clear benefit for Erin. She had nothing to gain financially and had previously maintained friendly relations with members of her former husband's family. They also argued that the theory Erin planned the poisoning while believing it could be disguised as a simple case of food poisoning was unrealistic. According to the defense, no rational person would expect to commit such a crime and escape suspicion so easily. The courtroom exchanges between both sides were intense. Erin Patterson eventually chose to testify herself, and became the only witness called by the defense. During her testimony, Erin admitted that she had told multiple lies earlier in the investigation. She explained that the purpose of inviting the family to lunch had been to repair strained relationships. She denied ever planning to harm her former husband if he had attended the gathering. Erin stated that she had intentionally kept her children away from the lunch because she felt embarrassed about an upcoming weight loss surgery and did not want to discuss it with her former in-laws. When questioned about the mushrooms, Erin changed her earlier explanation. She said she had personally gathered wild mushrooms from the forest and dried them at home, but claimed she did not realize some of them were deadly. According to her account, when preparing the meal, she mistakenly used poisonous dried mushrooms after mislabeling the storage containers. She also described experiencing vomiting and diarrhea after the meal, but said she avoided going to the hospital out of embarrassment. Her testimony attempted to present a scenario in which she herself had been another victim of a tragic mistake. On the 7th of May, 2025, after hearing all testimony and arguments, the jury began closed deliberations. Jurors were completely isolated to ensure they would not be influenced by the intense public attention surrounding the case. Eventually, the jury reached a unanimous verdict. Erin Patterson was found guilty on all charges. The verdict was announced publicly in court on the 7th of May, 2025. Families of the victims reacted with emotional relief, while the case continued to attract enormous public interest. The judge ordered that Erin be temporarily barred from transferring or hiding any assets pending possible civil compensation claims from the victims' families. The court then scheduled a sentencing hearing later in August 2025 to review victim impact statements. In total, 28 statements were submitted to the court. 7 representatives spoke directly, describing the pain and loss suffered by their families and requesting the harshest possible sentence. On the 8th of August, 2025, the judge formally sentenced Erin Patterson to life imprisonment for each count of murder, along with 25 years for attempted murder, with all sentences to run concurrently. The court also set a minimum non-parole period of 33 years. This meant Erin would not be eligible for parole until she was well into her 80s. After the trial, further legal actions followed. In October 2025, Erin Patterson's new legal team filed an appeal arguing that serious procedural errors during the trial had led to an unjust conviction. Among the issues raised was the claim that jurors had been housed in the same hotel as police officers and prosecutors during part of the trial, potentially compromising fairness. The defense also argued that prosecutors had questioned Erin in an excessively aggressive manner and that the court had allowed certain inappropriate witnesses to testify. In early November 2025, the Court of Appeal of Victoria agreed to hear Erin's appeal against the conviction. At the same time, state prosecutors filed their own appeal, arguing that the three-year minimum sentence was too lenient given the severity of the crimes. As a result, the case has not been fully closed. Additional appellate hearings are expected during 2026 to review both the conviction and the sentence. As of the end of 2025, Erin Patterson remained incarcerated at Dame Phyllis Frost Centre, a women's prison located in Western Melbourne, where she is reportedly being held under special protective conditions for safety reasons. The case left a profound impact on Australian society. Many observers noted that the central lesson from the tragedy involved trust. The victims had gathered for what appeared to be a normal family meal, unaware that something deadly might be hidden within it. Justice was ultimately delivered for Don and Gail Patterson, Heather Wilkinson, and the surviving family members whose lives were forever changed by this tragedy. But the scar left on the community's soul will take a long time to heal. Hopefully, this heartbreaking story will serve as a powerful reminder so that a tragic meal like this never happens again. What do you think was the real motive behind the actions of Erin Patterson? Leave your opinion in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the newest videos.